Okay, this set of video lectures will cover the UB04. This is the claim form that again is used for facility and other entity claims. Again, when do we use the UB04 claims? We use them for claims that are coming from institutional, or as some say, entity services. These are your inpatient and outpatient procedures. In other words, the facility codes that are provided by the hospital. These contain data entry blocks, in other words, the locators where we put data in. And sometimes these are parts of these are automatically generated. So if you hear the term electronic charge master, these are things that basically map a CPT code for an imaging exam, lab, or other service automatically. So it automatically matches the charge to that code. So you don't have to manually go in. So this is what we call the charge master. The electronic health record contains the patient demographic and insurance information, the provider documentation, so it kind of flows over. And then we have the abstracting system. So we code the diagnoses, and then we get those assigned medical codes, the diagnosis codes, what have you. And here's a sample. So we can see, just like we've had before, again, most forms, demographic information up top for the facility, followed by the patient. And then we get into our codes, claims, next claim, and so on. And again, most of these are going electronic. So the institutional providers submit these claims to the payers. And of course, we have the National Uniform Billing Committee that identifies and revises any data elements. Did a lot of that when we converted to ICD-10. So hopefully by having a Uniform Billing Committee, we get everybody on the same page. We eliminate or decrease at least data ambiguity. We have consistent data. And then again, we can use this data collection not only for reimbursement, but for state public reporting, health reporting systems. Again, we have to collect information. Again, it's a burden on the providers to report that. And HIPAA administration simplification has helped somewhat. Again, we have data being submitted in the same way. And each data element is assigned to a form locator, much like the blocks on the 1500. And again, these are required, not used, situational for data entry. So again, the game plan with all these things is to have data being submitted in a consistent manner. And you can see, again, more examples of the healthcare setting. Of course, UB04 covers ambulatory surgery centers, home health, hospice, hospital emergency department, hospital outpatient department, hospital inpatient, and nursing facilities. So here's a quick summary of some things we've covered in this chapter. Again, you'll be dealing with a lot with these claims. Even if you don't work in a billing office, it's important to understand where your coded data winds up. So you should know the terms that are related to CMS 1500 and UB04 claim forms. Have an idea about the completion process for the 1500 and the UB04 forms. Talk about the data entry, common errors, which is pretty straightforward, the steps, and get the opportunity to kind of take a look at some of these claim forms. That's all I have for you on chapter 11. In chapter 12, we'll get into commercial insurance. Even though CMS is extremely important, we have a whole lot of other different types of commercial insurance. In addition, we also have liability insurance, disability insurance, and other ones that we'll explore in Chapter 12. That's all I have. We'll see you online. Bye now.